and welcome. My name is Andy Last, and I'm Media Manager here at Pure Financial Advisors. And thank you all for joining us for this webinar with Pure Financial Advisors Information Systems Security Manager, Jake Stampfli. Jake has a Master's of Science degree in Cybersecurity and Information Assurance. And today he'll be sharing 10 cybersecurity tips and tricks to help keep all of us safer online. Great to see you. It's so rare that I actually get a chance to see you on screen. You're usually behind the scenes with me.
I even wore a tie for you. You know,
thank you.
Usually Joe's on this end of the camera, but you know, I appreciate getting the opportunity to do this, and we're here to kind of simplify some of the more complex cybersecurity issues of the day for you. So we're gonna go through that, and we're here to offer our top 10 cybersecurity tips and tricks. So with that being said, let's go to the slides. We're gonna go over what is hacking. I want to give you some tools to put in your bag, so you kind of okay, how is that done? What is being done to gather information to be used against me, right? And then we're going to go through keeping your software up to date, practicing good password management, antivirus and firewalls, Wi-Fi do's and don'ts, email, being careful what you click on. That's a very important one. I'm going to kind of dive into that a little bit. I got some visual aids for that one. Backups. May be important to some of you, may not be important to some of you. We're going to go through that. Using mobile devices safely. A lot of people think of mobile devices differently than they do personal computers. Encryption and video conferencing in the new normal. So hacking by Merriam-Webster is to gain illegal access to a computer network or system. I kind of want to get you to think about that, because that's how we know what hacking is today. It's what most people think of. They think of typically, they think of this dark hooded figure in some nefarious location with a bunch of wires and some sci-fi movie setting, right? So real hacking is, it's boring. It's a bunch of scrolling text and tools that people can utilize against a target or a person. So it's important for you to understand a couple concepts, right? So you're going to hear an onion analogy in most security classes that you take. So I'll kind of shrink down what I've learned and what I've gone through in my education, my certification. So they like to use the onion analogy because onions have layers, and in cybersecurity, it's a moving target on a sliding scale. And what that means is cybersecurity is always going to be moving. Attackers do something and then we do something, right? And nothing's ever going to be 100%. No one's ever going to be 100% secure. Let's say the Pentagon is 90% secure. Well, then the average person is probably going to be less than that, right? So we're going to give you some tips and tricks to kind of not be the low-hanging fruit. You don't have to be the NSA. You just don't have to be someone without a password, right? We're gonna layer that and layer the onion, kind of describe the onion and give you the layers to better secure yourself. This is kind of referred to as what is called the hunter's dilemma. It's kind of a morbid analogy, but you don't, if there's two hunters in the woods, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than the slowest hunter, right? It's kind of morbid, but to relate that to cybersecurity, you don't have to be the most secure person. You can be, you can have decent security and still be relatively safe. So I want you guys to think about that as we roll through this. So how do you get hacked? What happens, right? This isn't something that just happens. There's usually 5 phases of this. There's a bunch of different models that can be used, and TTPs as we call them, techniques, tactics, and procedures. But I'm gonna basically kind of shrink it down to a more bite-sized portion for you guys. So in reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, and then kind of covering their tracks is generally how the average computer user gets compromised. So in the reconnaissance phase, reconnaissance is nothing more than steps taken to gather evidence, and this can be what we refer to as passive or active. Passive is looking at your social media, right? Your Facebook. They know who your friends are, who your nieces are, what you ate for lunch, based on your social media, anywhere from Snapchat to Facebook to Twitter. So it's kind of funny. My first course was actually had nothing to do with tool sets. It was actually Facebook and reconnaissance, passive reconnaissance on people. So be careful what you post on Facebook. I actually had a friend, side story, who flew a drone through his house, and he asked me, "Well, wasn't this really cool? Look at this drone footage." And I said, "Yeah, you're showing everybody your house and what's inside your house, and but I'm always thinking from that mindset," and he wasn't. So, and he was like, "Oh, you're probably right," and took the video down. So, scanning and enumeration is just what we've learned from the first phase. We carried on to the second phase, right? They're going to take that information and kind of maybe be more active and utilize tool sets to kind of see if there's an avenue where they can get into your computer. And they're going to take what they've learned from 2 and move to 3, which is gaining access. And in this, they're going to use what they've used in the enumeration phase to kind of get entry into your systems or your network or something that you didn't see. Target, interesting story, Target was hacked through a thermostat. Smart enough to be on the network, dumb enough to not be a computer and have normal, anti-vulnerability, anti-malware controls. So once they were in, they compromised a bunch of users. So maintaining access, once you're in, you want to ensure that you have a way back in from a hacking perspective, right? So a lot of people will go, "Oh, I think I have a virus. My computer's flashing all these things, and it's really loud, and I don't know what to do. I have all these pop-ups." That's probably just annoying spam. They can use that to deliver malicious payloads, but if something's loud and noisy, it's probably because they're trying to get you to click on something, or they're just advertising and trying to be annoying. Real threats are quiet. Real threats don't want you to know that they're there, right? So that leads to the 5th stage, where they're going to kind of cover their tracks up and make sure that they have a persistent access to you. So this is generally how all that stuff happens. I felt it very important to explain, because a lot of people think that, there's these Hollywood things, Hollywood movie scenes where people are just in the matrix and they're hacking really fast, and all of a sudden, oh, they're in. It takes months, weeks, sometimes years to hack into certain organizations or people. It doesn't just happen overnight. And we're going to talk about the time aspect of that a little later.
Jake, real quick, we got a question. Pat would like to know if your Facebook posts are limited to friends only. Does this mean that Facebook is hacked? I think Pat would like to know whether or not that is safe to be able to post that drone footage if the only people who can see it are your friends.
Right. Great question. So if you limit, a lot of these platforms have security checks, and they allow you to go through and go, okay, who do you want to view this? Who do you want to? I would highly encourage that. However, we like to refer to this as breadcrumbs or linkability. Chances are, like I said, it's a sliding scale, right? Nothing's 100%. So if you feel that it's safe with just friends and family, then okay. But there's always that small percentage. And I would encourage you, like he said, to go through those security settings and make sure that you look at those and that you limit who has access to your personal information and your personal lives.
And I guess something to keep in mind is the fact that people can actually screenshot things and share them outside of friends and family. So there is still danger there. Exactly.
And once it's on the internet, it's really hard to retract it, right? So that's a great question. Feel free to interrupt and keep coming with that. I love those questions.
You got it.
All right. So this would be our first tip and trick. Keeping your software up to date, right? A lot of people view this from multiple angles. The 2 most common angles that I get on this one are, well, I don't want to update my software because it'll break my system. This is a fallacy. If it does break something, it's going to be fixed within a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then the other angle is, well, every time I update, it takes like 45 minutes. It takes an hour, and I don't have time for that. I have to get my job done, and that's understandable. Computers are a way for you to complete what you need to and connect to the world, right? It's kind of inconvenient if you have to constantly be patching, which is in the state we live in. Constant patching is seeming to be the norm. But the reason why those patches take so long, normal patches for Windows take anywhere from 30 seconds to less than 3 to 5 minutes, right? Core updates for the major operating systems, those are the ones that take 45 minutes, 20 minutes. Those are long. But if you take a long time to patch, I guarantee you it will take 45 minutes and 60 minutes. The longer you wait, the more your system will start to degrade and not be able to operate. Windows actually needs to be restarted to apply these important and critical patches. So if you just do something every Friday, like apply patches and then restart your computer, once a week or, twice a month, you'll most likely be fine. The important thing to remember here is that a security patch or update is communication to hackers. If you have a vulnerability, software manufacturers or computer operating system companies will push out what's called a security patch. And if you don't have that, that is now an attack vector for hackers. So they don't break your system. They're good. Please update. They are definitely communication to bad actors. And you want to avoid older versions of software. So finding a way in, right? Practicing good password management is a huge, huge thing. I would encourage people right now, the industry standard, how we use it in a corporate environment, is to use a complex password. The person who came up with this stated that, you want an 8 to 12 character password or more. More would be better, because that, I'll talk about time in a second here. Complex password is upper, lowercase, special characters like that period you see here on the slide, the $sign. The longer, more complex something is, the better it is, the more time it takes for that person to get in. But the person who made that is kind of recanting now, and he's saying that dice word passwords, which is actually the second on that slide right here. Dice word password is like 3 to 5 disassociated words. There's a bunch of random password generators that you can create online, or you can come up with them yourself. And they're 3 to 5 disassociated words connected with a special character. In this case, it's a dash. Bowling, Utopia, Prince, right? And this, it takes a lot of time. The longer the password is, the more time it takes. The more complex it is, the harder it is. They can't just use what's called a dictionary attack. So in the reconnaissance phase, people are predictable. They're gonna make their password their nephew's birthday, or their fiance's name, or their anniversary, and attackers know this. They know that human beings have similar characteristics, and they're gonna go after those traits, and they're gonna take that information that they gain for you in the phases of hacking, and they're gonna use that in automated tool sets to come after you and try and crack your passwords. That's actually what's referred to as cracking, not actually hacking. Hacking is playing with something and coming up with a way to use it other than the way it was intended. You've heard of life hacks. It's a great way of thinking of it. Okay, so you can even make a complex dice word password if you want. But the important thing here, if you have a takeaway from this, I would say make it complex, make it 12 or more characters. Right now, we're not really set up. A lot of things still want that complex password. How it works in the real world and application is we have, the bleeding edge research and information coming back, and then we have where the industry is, right? And it's always trailing behind the bleeding edge. So he's kind of recanting on that now and saying, oh, well, dice word passwords are the best. It's really time. The longer it is, the better it is. So you want to disassociate from that. You don't want to have things that you can attach to you or someone can find from your life, right? So avoid that and avoid password reuse. Password reuse on the web is huge right now. If you use the same password in multiple places, then people really don't need to try very hard to attack you from that angle. They can kind of just take that one password that you use in multiple places, and they can just compromise you that way. Yes, Andy?
Nancy would like to know, what about password apps that save all passwords? Are those safe?
Really good question. Yes, I wanted to touch on that real quick. So that's called a password manager. I encourage those. Password managers will memorize the passwords for you, and here's the key. They'll generate unique passwords of any length or complexity for you, and some of them even do dice word passwords that we just discussed. The caveat there is if you have one master password to access all of your saved randomly generated passwords, well, then you can be compromised if they get that one password, right? This is where two-factor authentication comes into play. So how I like to explain two-factor authentication is it's something you have and something you know, right? So two-factor authentication will be the something you know will be your ID and your password that you normally would use for a site that could be stored in a password manager. And then two-factor authentication will be an application that you download to your phone. a text code that you send to your phone or a one-time password to send to your email, right? I would avoid the less secure routes like text-based authentication and email-based one-time passwords, because those avenues can be compromised. Having that is better than not having it. Don't have an all or nothing attitude when it comes to security. Something is better than nothing. But I would encourage you to download an app on your phone and use that app to generate codes every 30, 60, 90 seconds, however that works.
Another one. I think this one is actually related to your last slide, but I think it applies here as well. Is free software as good as paid software? That one's from Debbie.
Ooh, that's a good one. So there's a lot of free software alternatives, and this one gets tricky because people get really passionate about this. So this is one of those things that I'll give you my take on it. I don't by any means pretend to know everything. So this is a very passionate camp of people. So I'm going to be as delicate as I can. Free software is generally created by companies in order for you to be the product. It's meant to be distributed to meet a need or a service in order for you to serve an analytical base. So they get information from you for using that software. Open source software is a principle that the code should be open source behind software, and that it should be free for people to use and manipulate. And if they manipulate it, it's up to them. They just have to change the name, and it depends on the licensing behind it. Free software foundation software is more of an ideology. So you can read more about those things on the open web, but open source software is generally, it's more free as in freedom than it is free as in beer. But it's, yeah, I like that one too. So
that's good.
So that's really how you could think about that. I would avoid freeware, and I would stick to more free software foundation and open source. Whenever you hear open source, it's not that it's necessarily safe or trustworthy. It just has a better purpose behind it. If you're going to use free software, you're going to go that route.
All right.
Thank you.
Back to you.
All right. And next we have antivirus and firewall. So there's a lot of arguments today of, do I need it? Don't I need it? Doesn't Windows Defender offer free, antivirus? And I heard Macs don't get, they don't get it. I'm not here to endorse one brand or another. I have to kind of stay away from that. So, but Macs typically have less of the market share. So it's not that they don't have viruses. In fact, they're in the news today for more 0 days because they're getting more popular. There's another operating system you might not be aware of, Linux, that every website, just about every website, the entire internet is, everything that connects the internet is Linux. And they're starting to get some malware being written for them. But for the most part, most people use Windows. So Windows is what's written for the most. You can use it. It is getting better. But antivirus can be more. Antivirus does more things. They start to combine it with more tool sets. It can combine with artificial intelligence. It can combine with other security tool sets. So utilizing that on your computer is definitely going to be another layer, as we talked about, going back to that onion. It's going to be adding layers to your security, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to elevate ourselves to not being low-hanging fruit, and that hunter's dilemma. And we want to add layers to our security posture, our onion. So with that being said, firewalls are your doors and windows, right? It's kind of a crude analogy, but a firewall essentially will filter traffic, and there's all sorts of firewalls. They can be hardware-based or software-based. They can be combined with other platforms to make you more secure, and they come native on every operating system. So if you have one, Mac comes off by default, I believe. So you could check inside of your security settings in Mac, in settings, security settings, and you can just turn it on. And that's going to start making sure, just like you check to see who's at your door, your computer's going to check to see what's coming through your computer, right? So all these things are because hackers constantly are attacking and finding new avenues for us to kind of mitigate. So they make a move and we respond. They make a move and we respond. Things are becoming a little more proactive today, but that's generally how it goes. Okay, wife, go for it. I'm getting a lot here. I like it. Oh. Not able to hear you.
My apologies. Sorry, Jane says, I have Windows 10 and you said to use the latest version. Do I need to upgrade?
So as long as you're running patches, you're pulling down security patches. So you can hit the Windows Start menu and just type in the word update, and it'll automatically search in your Windows settings, updates, and then click search. And it should pull down the most recent security patches. Sometimes you have to force it, you know what I mean? And like I said, Windows needs to restart in order to get those security patches implemented. So no need, if you're already on Windows 10, no need to upgrade unless you're on, we go by versions. So if you're on 1607, I don't know how that's possible, but I would encourage you to upgrade to the latest version release, and you can check that. And Microsoft should be checking your operating system and keeping you slowly, incrementally up to date. And Microsoft's actually pretty good. They know that they're the most attacked operating system out there, so they should be kind of nudging and gradually, implementing these core updates, as we call them. So when it goes from one version of Windows to another, it's not a huge forklift, and you're not sitting there for 40 minutes, right? So I hope that answers the question.
We do have one more right now. This one is from Emily. She says, is antivirus software necessary for cell phones?
Good question. That was a huge debate in a lot of my academic and certifying authority circles. I would say the conclusion after the argument is it couldn't hurt, but I will leave you with this. The biggest attack vectors today are web and mobile. So take it for what you will. A lot of times if you get an antivirus, they offer free mobile with the PC and laptop subscription. Mobile is usually defined as anything that's not like a traditional computer, like a laptop or desktop.
Excellent. All right, back to your presentation.
All right. So I know this might rub people wrong because this is public Wi-Fi, right? Most people are like, look, I just want to exist on the internet. I'm just trying to text my husband. I'm trying to look at what my nephew is doing on Facebook. I'm not trying to do anything nefarious, you know what I mean? But you got to be careful. You got to be aware that there's people out there that don't have the good intentions and don't really care what you're up to, right? They're just out to target people. So public Wi-Fi, I would just urge you probably not to use that. There's some that are safer than others, but it would be impossible for the average user without tools to tell, right? There's a good place that offers free Wi-Fi should be implementing good security and doing something called segmenting. So that's if you hop online and I hop online, I can't see what you're doing, right? But that's not the case. A lot of people just want to offer a service when they open up like a small coffee shop or something like that. And in that case, I can be malicious and sit there and put up a fake network and just add a period at the end of it. I can be, big coffee chain period, as opposed to just coffee chain, so, and I can intercept your traffic. And then if you're doing banking on there, which I hope you're not doing banking on public networks, please don't do that. Then I can capture that traffic and I can go back to our hacking phases and I can get more information from reconnaissance. Yes, Andy.
David would like to have a little bit of clarification. Not sure what you mean by public Wi-Fi. Is that what we can get at Starbucks or something like that? That
is correct. Yes. Sorry about that. So to clarify that would be any Wi-Fi network that's not your own. That's a good way of thinking about it. Like even work, you shouldn't be doing anything on a work computer because trust me, they're capturing all that information, and they have to. Some industries are regulated, like financial industries, and they have to meet certain regulations. But for this case, to answer your question, anything outside of your home network, yes, that is what we're referring to. That would be Panera Bread, the big chains that you go to. A lot of these places offer free Wi-Fi. It's kind of expected that free Wi-Fi is out there. So, but they've learned to capitalize on the information gathered from that, and some of them do sell it to third-party vendors. Some of them will, there's a lot of things that can happen. We're going to focus on the hacking aspect of it right now. So is that good? We good?
I have one more for you.
Oh, yeah.
Mel would actually like to know if you have a recommendation for antivirus software.
I can't personally endorse things. I have used Sophos in the past. I've used I've had people use Norton and be successful, but I would just use something that is that uses more than just a signature that they can compare against. So in English, what that means is I would use something that uses more than just, oh, hey, these are the things that this antivirus should be looking for. They're incorporating next generation tools like artificial intelligence or, file behavior and what you normally would do in your computer. Like you can look up the top paid antivirus. Please stay away from freebies. They tend to, if you're not paying for it, you are usually the product. So just remember that too.
I've got a couple of questions here about VPN. Do you want to take those now or should we wait?
Sure, because maybe I can kill two birds with one stone with that one.
Okay. Frank would like to know, does using a VPN on a public network provide security? And Kim would like to know, how do I get a VPN?
Oh, okay.
You might have to explain what a VPN is first.
Yes. So virtual private network, what it does is it encrypts your traffic from your computer to the point that you're connecting to. So the VPN gateways is called. So from your computer to the VPN, right? It's the easiest way to explain it. And what encryption is we're going to get into that next slide, but I'm going to cover it here too. It's just encoding what you're doing. So it's not readable to the other party, right? It's an easy, probably ripped down version of what encryption is. But anyways, so yes, they're not going to be able to gather in plain text all of your stuff. They will be able to gather some information, but for the most part, you'll be protected. So if you do have to go on a public network, I would encourage you to utilize a VPN, a virtual private network. You can stand these up yourself, but for the sake of, I'm going to assume that we have a varied audience here and there are tech savvy people, and that I'm going to cut it down the middle and say, I would go with a paid service. There's a ton of really good paid service, and what you want to look for in that is, do they keep logs? You're not trying to hide from the government. You're not going to, that's another whole big rabbit hole. It's not possible. There's so many degrees of trust from your point of connection to the internet. I just would avoid that. And I would worry about companies and whether or not you're accomplishing what you want to in a safe manner. And I think a paid virtual private network will, for the most part, accomplish that. But know that you're still at some risk.
All right, back to you. Okay.
And the last one on here would be to secure your home Wi-Fi. So most people, they'll go to their internet service provider and they'll get a box that does everything. That's a network appliance essentially. But this box, it's actually a bunch of different things. If you were to blow that up, everything in that box we have here just individually is its own little appliance. So if you were to go get internet from your internet service provider, chances are they'll print everything on the side. And as long as it's a complex password, it's longer than 8 to 12 characters, you should be fine. The only thing to remember there is, if you're in an apartment complex and that box is in the window and people can just read, the password to your router and the PIN, to your internet box, they can probably get into it. And there's two passwords there. So there's the password to your Wi-Fi network, right? Let's say Jake's Wi-Fi. And I have a really strong password, right? And that's how you join my network. But there's also another, like I said, there may be tech savvy people here that bought their own modems from a big box store, right? There might be another modem that you've purchased yourself and that you set up. So you might not be aware that the default admin username and password for just about every modem is just available for free on the internet. You can just look that stuff up. So if you're out in the sticks, if you're one person out in Ramona, or that's a local town here, it's pretty rural, and you see a set of headlights, it's going to be pretty suspicious. You're going to know that someone's kind of trying to get free Wi-Fi, right? But if you're in an apartment complex and you have 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people, chances are there's somebody in that apartment complex that's pretty tech savvy, and they know how to get into the back end of your custom modem. So go for it.
Barbara would like to know, is a personal hotspot secure?
Cell phone companies do what they can. They're limited, and it depends on if the traffic is encrypted or not. Like I say, that's where it's best just to default and just, and turn a VPN on when you can. That's the best answer I can give you for that one.
And Fred would like to know, is Netgear's Armor security package a good way to secure a home Wi-Fi network?
I'm actually not familiar with that one, so I can look that up and probably get back to you on that one. But yeah,
sounds good. All right, back to you.
Okay, so yeah, so there's two things to remember with securing your own Wi-Fi, right? There's your actual network, and then there's the back end of that box, right? And if you get it from your internet service provider, it's going to have a password already set in there. As long as it's complex, you're fine. Keep it out of plain view, right? Because that would be part of the reconnaissance phase. Physical security, walking through and seeing what I can just observe, that's some hackers will resort to that. So be careful. Email. This is a huge one. This is a huge one. So avoid internet service provided email service, please. If you get almost nothing from this, I would say password manager, two-factor authentication, and a decent email service that has security tools that you can run through. And I'm going to talk about that in the security check bullet. Would be great. So to clarify what that is if you get internet through AT&T, sometimes they offer email. I believe it was SBC Global. If you get some of the other ones, they'll offer an email, right? That generally isn't the best idea. They're here to offer you internet. It's not what they normally do. So if you have this, it may be okay to keep it. I would lean more towards you should get a normal Outlook or Gmail that has, the tools to secure you, and that actually you can go through security checkpoints, and they'll guide you through how to, secure your account, as opposed to someone who that's not really their thing. And a good marker to know is this something I should have or not? Ask them if they offer two-factor authentication. If they don't, I would move immediately to one of the bigger services. But yeah, so this is a huge issue. Phishing. You can see here I have an example up. It's from PayPal. So when they purchase a domain, so domain is paypal.com, right? That's a domain. Once they purchase that from the providers, nobody else can purchase that, right? And that's something to help you determine whether this email is phishing. A lot of things that you can do too is compare the email address. Like if your brother Dave Smith sent you an email, right, and his email says, wwf.smackdown@gmail.com, it's probably not your brother Dave, right? Or if it's garbled or encrypted, we'll get into that in the URL links. It's probably not Dave, but that's not everything, right? Security is a sliding scale, so nothing equals 100. You kind of, okay, I can compare the email, that's check one. And you can see here too so they can't own the domain example here is PayPal they're trying to spoof, right? You can see here it says real PayPal and they've entered a 1, right? And then the .ru is the designator for Russia. So obviously this is probably not a good email. And they'll try and, at the bottom of this phishing email, this is something I set out company-wide for our training. And this is really great because it walks them through like, hey, check the email for any misspellings, suspicious tones, demanding requests. Does it feel legitimate to you? Because you know what traffic feels legitimate to you. And if you don't, worst case scenario, just delete it. They'll have to send the email again. It's better than you clicking on stuff, right? Which I'm about to get into the dangers of clicking on stuff. But you can see here that there's this kind of robotic tone to it. Alert, there have been multiple failed login attempts to your account. It may have been compromised, like all caps. It's very robotic. It's almost not proper English. And you can see that they have urgent tones to it, like immediately, urge, risk, now. That's someone trying to get you to click on something. Now, the good part is that's phishing. They haven't executed an attack yet. They're trying to get you to click on something, or they're trying to get you to call them. And if you're unsure, Amazon's not going to send you stuff. Google's not going to send you stuff. Apple's not going to send you stuff. But if you're curious, if you're really legitimately worried, pick up the phone, call them. Say, hey, has my account been compromised? I received this email. And they might even request you that you forward the email, and it'll help their security department out. So it's a huge thing. Phishing emails today. It's one of the biggest attack vectors. It usually results in insider threats. So an insider threat is someone inside of a company that will actually click on a link by accident. They don't mean to. There's no malicious intent behind it, but they've just kind of oops and let someone have access to the system, right? We have go ahead, Andy.
I got a couple of questions on the slide that you just had. Jeff would like to know, do I understand correctly that a Gmail account is more secure than an SBC Global account?
So I don't want to get into that. I don't want to go into endorsements, but I would say anything that allows you to run security checks is inherently at least more hardened.
Okay. Dorothy says, would you apply the no ISP email to Spectrum, or are they large enough?
I would say none of them are large enough, in my opinion. There's so many attack vectors with email, and there's so many things on the back end that need to be in place and happen. And they may have that, they may not have that, but it's better not to have that question mark, in my opinion.
Okay. And another one just came through. This is from Teresa. Is it a bad idea to utilize the unsubscribe here link at the bottom of junk emails or other mailings that you don't want?
No, that's perfect. Yeah. A lot of people don't actually know about that. So thank you for the tip and trick. So we'll include you as the 11th. So yeah, the 11th tip and trick here is you can unsubscribe from emails. That's great. You can, in some email providers, it'll be up top or in 3 dots on the sidebar. But most emails have them when you scroll all the way down, you'll see like an unsubscribe link or a, hey, if you don't wish to receive this, go ahead and unsubscribe here. And that actually lessens the amount of junk mail. Imagine if, your physical mail, imagine if you had control of, you could just go, no more junk mail. That'd be great. And that's kind of a way of limiting that. You're still going to be subject to, third-party advertisements, but.
And then Nancy just asked, how do you run a security check on email?
If it's a function that they offer, there will be some sort of security checkup in the settings area. Normally that'll be under your icon name or under some sort of setting. You can even Google it. Like I'm trying not to endorse people. I'm like, yeah, you can Google it. So yeah, you can search on the web, security checkup for your email service.
All right, back to you.
All right, thank you. So be careful what you click on, right? Web links are more than you think. One of the ways that I take control completely of a computer, if we get a new laptop, I actually just send it a link and I click on it, and now I have complete administrative access and control of the whole thing. And there's various other things like remote access. I don't want to go into that black hole, but it can be pretty scary. Links can be pretty scary when it comes to clicking on stuff. If you do click on a link, a good way to maybe mitigate that is to run your antivirus. If you are still unsure, I would take it to a computer professional and have them look, and they can run their own tool sets against it. A lot of times these guys have really high dollar tool sets. I would avoid, once again, big box stores. They're not going to really have the knowledgeable personnel. They're not going to have the certified personnel, and it's not their first focus. Their first focus is selling you things. So I would go to your local computer repair shop or a computer security specialist and have them run industry standard toolkits with certified personnel. And they may recommend new hardware or wiping the system. And I would urge you not to chase viruses, as I call it. So don't try and remove it yourself. If there's any question, just reimage your system. I've seen too many bad things happen too quickly. So so back to the web links. Look at the uniform resource locator. So when you go johnswebsite.com, right? You'll see up here we used Pure Financial. You can see that that's the domain that we've paid for, as we discussed prior, and you can see the lock, right? The lock means it's your interaction between your computer and the website's encrypted, right? Does that mean you're necessarily connected to a trustworthy person? Nope. It does not mean that your connection is trustworthy or not malicious. There can be a malicious server that got you to click on it, and they just use a free search generator to generate that lock. So it is kind of suspicious in 2021 to not have that lock there, that representation of encryption. but it doesn't mean for sure that your connection is safe. And I've had that question a lot. So you can see the URL of number one, johnsmith.com. That's a really straightforward. When you go to the web, you're probably either going to be www.johnsmith.com or johnsmith.com. And your web browser knows to kind of look at that. A web browser is Chrome, Firefox, Edge, or Safari, something that comes with your computer or something you've downloaded. People get pretty passionate about browsers, and you can see if we take that principle of looking at the domain, johnsmith.com, well, number two is still legitimate. Number three, however, is where a hacker might start to get clever. They put a period in there separating it. So this is no longer John Smith's domain. This is john.smith, and it might not even be a proper domain. And then we have another spoof on number four where it's John with a 0, 1, for the I, smith.com. That's also malicious. Things I see quite frequently also are number five. That's a encrypted link. That will be something that's obfuscated, which means hidden through encryption. So they can't really hover over it. You know what I mean? And then number six is you can minify a link. You can shrink a link. There's sites you can go to where you can paste like a malicious link in, and you can shrink it so it doesn't say, johnsmith.malware.com. It'll just say tinycc or whatever the link is, right? But you can hover over these links, and it'll show you where it goes. And like I said, real viruses are quiet, right? To link back to that first one.
All right, real quick, I have a number of people who have actually asked about the unsubscribe thing. Is it always safe to unsubscribe? This sometimes let the phishers know that they have a potential victim. I've always heard it's best to simply delete the email and to avoid any response to the phishing attempt.
So by default, yes, delete, but and marketing uses this as a trend too. They know if an email has been delivered successfully. They know if you've clicked on it. They know a lot of things off the bat. So you're kind of hedging your bets here, but yes, delete by default, but unsubscribe. Chances are they already have that information anyways by just simply the successful delivery of that email.
Okay, back to you.
Thank you. All right, so backups. What are backups? Backups are data integrity, right? We have this rule of backups. Let me see if I can remember my base IT class. So 3, 2, 1, right? 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none as far as backups go. So for enterprise, it's really necessary. For you, you're going to have to decide, is this important for me? Is this not important for me? You don't know. How important is the paperwork you're trying to protect, right? Or the thing you're trying to protect. If it's your kids' photos, probably want to back that up, right? Everything's digital now. It's kind of a weird thing to think about, but I have things that aren't on the internet. My son kind of doesn't. His whole digital life has been on the internet. So it's kind of weird to think about from that angle. But your backups, it depends on whether you want a local backup of that. Most people think of backups in that manner, but it may not be necessary. You might be utilizing a cloud platform service that is backed up redundantly. And it may not be necessary. So you have to decide that, but there's different types of backups. You can use network backups. You can use a little external drive. You don't have to be crazy and do something that's next level computing, right? But something like that helps preserves information. And you can restore from that too if you've been compromised. Using mobile devices safely. So a personal computer, a lot of people think of PC, it means Windows. It actually doesn't. Personal computer just means a chipset that is designed for personal computing. So by that standard, an iPad is a PC, an iPhone is a PC, an Android is phone is a PC, the Samsung tab is a PC. So these are all mobile devices though, and they should be treated as computers. I know I said earlier, someone asked me earlier, hey, should I put antivirus on my phone? It couldn't hurt. It's just going to continue to be an attack vector. And companies like Apple are blurring those lines where now Mac OS is on an ARM-based chip. So that's a smaller chipset that's usually built for iPhones. So it feels like they're heading in a more mobile-centric direction, right? So we need to be concerned about how we use mobile devices and what we connect to. And that's kind of just my PSA, my public service announcement for this slide. The best practices that we had previously discussed still stand for this. You can download a VPN as an app, a paid VPN. You can connect to a VPN if you're tech savvy enough and you want to take that on. You can connect to your home via a VPN that you stand up yourself. Just remember, it's not different just because it's mobile. It's still an attack vector, and hackers only need to be right once. We need to be right all the time, right? So that's kind of our fight. Go ahead, Andy.
Let's see. We got a question from Louise. She says a lot of websites ask about cookie preferences. How should those be handled?
Yes, I believe that's due to GDPR. They're actually rethinking that from the last security summit notes that I was looking at, because what happens is in enterprise security, you get a lot of false positives, and then you get technicians just clicking on it, and they're just tired of looking at it. So that's happening with people. But yes, cookies are locally stored information on your computer, and there's information that's gathered from that too. I don't want to go down the privacy hole in this one. We're trying to talk about best way to add layers to our security onion, right, to make you not low-hanging fruit. But yes, information is stored. You can clear those cookies. I'll just give you a little privacy tip there. You can set your browser, Chrome, Firefox, right, Edge, Safari, those are your browsers. You can clear them. And your question originally, can you repeat that again? Make sure I'm answering its entirety.
Lots of websites ask about cookie preferences. How should these be handled?
Right. I would personally set a cookie deletion rule on your web browser. That would be what I would do. I know you have to click accept or ignore if you're not comfortable with it. You can click do not accept. But people are starting to get savvy to that, and they're starting to make their websites not work, or have it be limited, or actually redirect you. I've had a couple websites redirect me as just a test. So it's up to you. It's kind of the world we live in today. There's actually more persistent cookies being created as we speak. So, but I think the best way right now is just to kind of clear your cache upon exit, which means that just anything stored locally just kind of clears that when you close your browser.
I was going to say, I think that's something you can set in, I believe, Firefox and possibly other browsers as well, where when you're done with your session, you close the browser, all the cookies are cleared.
That is correct. Yeah, it's kind of become a big talking point because it's kind of a you started it thing. Like there was this big privacy wave that happened in Europe, and GDPR kind of took a lot of that on, and they started bannering people, and then so people got curious. Okay, you're bannering me. What does this banner mean? And they're like, oh my God, okay. And so they just continued to have questions. So this is kind of the back of that wave, so to speak. But yes, you can set your browser to delete. And it's a good recommendation. You don't want things, they actually can produce problems, right? Andy, we've run into that a bunch of times where local information was stored and it was the incorrect information and the browser couldn't, refresh. And so we've had to clear it out and then it started working again.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of like a weird mini operating system, but it's not really apt. But yeah, if it's convenient, it's not secure. If it's secure, it's not convenient. That's generally a principle that you can apply to everything. So you have to decide how much security you want, how much security you don't want, or is necessary for you. I hope that can be as clear as possible in a really nebulous, we'll just say, topic.
All right, back to you.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, and we touched on backups and earlier back on storing information separately, right? And so you can encrypt that data. Encrypting is just encoding. I'm not going to go into, types of schemas or anything like that. But how can it help? Well, it basically takes your information and makes it so another person can't read it. So you have to decide if that is appropriate for you. If you have a bunch of sensitive documents and you want to have encrypted, then it's up to you to decide whether or not that's something you need. But how can it help? It keeps private things private. But like I said, a way of looking at this is a file vault in macOS. When you start up macOS, you have the option of having your drive encrypted. You can do the same thing with Windows and BitLocker and encrypt your computer, right? So if someone tries to copy the data, it's going to be like, give me the BitLocker keys or give me the keys to that. And if they can't, then they just can't get it, or they'll have to wipe it completely, right? So at least that, they might erase your data, but at least it's safe. A big company can help you get back into it, not always. And if you do it yourself, know that you will be taking that on. And there's a possibility, just like you can lose the key to your house, you can lose the key to your information, and it might be an issue. And video conferencing in the new normal. So this, I'll just be quick about this. A lot of people are, COVID happened to us. We didn't expect it, right? We had to pivot to going to school remote, going to work remote. And we had to do a lot of things to mitigate risks around that and pivot to these things that just allowed us to connect. Zoom did very good, patching a lot of these vulnerabilities that were found in the beginning. And they're not the same as they were when we started them. It's great. That's how you want to judge companies. If companies have a breach, you don't want to go, oh, well, they hacked, I don't want to deal with them. You want to go, well, how did they deal with the hack? That's really what you want to look at. So in video conferencing, look at how many people are participating. You can actually see participants in most video conferencing apps. Be careful what you click on. The principle of links still exists. Is the conference encrypted? How is it encrypted? Is it end-to-end? Because that means something different. End-to-end means from my computer to your computer, this session is encrypted and nobody else can kind of intercept it unless it goes through, a back-end server somewhere. And then obviously the vendor can see that information. What security controls are there? I know in some applications, once all the participants have joined, you can actually lock it. And be careful sending files back and forth. Do you trust the person that sent the file? Because malicious code can be executed in files. So with that being said, like I said, if it's secure, it's probably not convenient. If it's convenient, it's probably not secure. I can't decide what's secure for what your security needs are for you. You kind of have to do that, but hopefully we've given you enough layers on your onion now to not be low-hanging fruit and kind of mitigate some of the risks. But if you were to take anything from this, I would say password manager, two-factor authentication, and make sure you go through security checks.
I have a couple more questions for you. David says, are products such as LifeLock helpful?
Yes, LifeLock can be helpful. There's several other industry standards, I'll just say. Real tricky dancing around this. So yeah, there's a few other industry standards, but it does help you in the event that something bad happens. We'll just leave it at that.
All right. And then are bank websites secure?
Oh, I love that one. So they're subject to the same rules of that everybody else is. Just because they have that lock doesn't mean that someone can't conduct an attack on their website or strip your information, and there's a million connections between your computer and that bank's website. The bank can't guarantee that those connections are secure either. So just because you see a website, once again, with a lock on it, it doesn't guarantee that it's not malicious, or there's not something malicious on your computer or in between your computer and that website.
We have just a few minutes left, so if you do have any more questions for Jake about cybersecurity, now is the time to type them into the chat. We have another one from Jane. How can you secure personal information online? When I Google my name, it comes up on several different people search websites with a lot of information: city, age, address, phone number. What is the best way to wipe this or control what personal details show up online from public records?
So, okay, that's tricky. Like I said, with the internet, it's easy to expand your footprint, but it's really hard to contract it, right? You can change your habits on social media. You can change what you share on social media. You can petition those companies to take your information down. And you can also, I believe there's a few third-party applications that'll allow you to kind of conduct web-based privacy searches and kind of not retract your footprint, but help clean it up. I don't have those offhand right now, but yeah, it really boils down to being aware of your digital self and your digital footprint.
And I know Jane mentioned some of those people search websites. Some of them have places directly on the site where you can ask to have that page removed. But the problem is then that there's no guarantee that they're not going to continue repopulating that information. So it's a constant effort to keep that information offline.
Yeah, information is kind of the new oil. So
Mark says, are fingerprint passwords safer than written ones?
So biometrics, that would be your face, your eye, something of physical, biology. So 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. So if you have a really weak password, because a lot of these phones will be like, hey, give me a PIN before I allow biometrics, right? Well, that PIN's 4 digits, so that PIN still exists. So yes, the biometrics are harder to crack, and you're not in public, pushing this PIN in. So if you have a shoulder surfer, nobody's going to be able to get that PIN. But it's a 4-digit PIN. Given enough time, there's that time thing we talked about earlier. Almost everything is crackable. So, I mean, we account for that. The major vendors account for that. But to answer your question, I would have a strong PIN, and I would say yes, it's inherently a little harder to crack than just a PIN, but that still is reliant upon other measures on your phone. So I know that might be clear as mud, but a lot of cybersecurity stuff is. I was hoping to clarify a lot here.
Christine says, can the home Wi-Fi password be changed to make it more secure?
Absolutely. These home Wi-Fi, if you're unsure about what it is, you can contact your internet service provider, because if you don't know what it is, chances are that you're just renting a box from a service provider, and you can contact them and say, hey, I would like to make my home internet more secure. And you can even petition them, what do you have that would make this more secure? Because more and more companies are kind of taking that on and going, okay, we'll monitor your security, we'll monitor this, we'll monitor that. There's a privacy aspect to that, but for the most part, we'll stick to the security here. And they'll tell you how to get in, but for the most part, it's a default IPv4 web address like 192.168.0.1 or 1.1 or 1.0 or 1.254. It's going to be one of those. And if you do that in your web browser, you'll actually get in to your internet service provided internet appliance, we'll just say. It's actually multiple things, like I said, Sandy. So, and then, like I said, the password should be on the side.
Okay, we only have time for one more question, and a bunch more questions are coming in. So if you do have more questions for Jake, email info@purefinancial.com, and we will make sure to get those to him so that he can answer your questions for you. And let's see, let's pick one more question. Let's see. Bruce says, how do you know if the Microsoft webpage that comes up on a Google search is the real one or a fake?
Sliding scale, right? So it should have the TLS, like a valid. So you can actually click on that lock, that TLS, that little lock up in the top left. If you click on it, you can see view certificate, and you can actually drill down into who issued it, when it was issued, when it'll expire. And there's various third-party apps that you can use to copy and paste that URL, Microsoft.com, or the domain Microsoft.com into a checker, right? Central Ops will do that, but then we're getting into more tech-savvy stuff of like, hey, you need to be able to read the back-end stuff that happens on a website, and I don't expect you to do that. So just look at the domain. If it's Microsoft.com, your chances that it's Microsoft have increased. If it has the TLS, your chances are that it's increased. If you can view the certificate and it's valid, your chances have increased. Nothing's 100%, but that's how you tell these things.
And then just finally, David says, thank you. This was really good and a little scary.
Oh, well, remember, low hanging fruit. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other hunter. So,
all right. And again, if you do have more questions for Jake, you can email those to info@purefinancial.com, and we will get them to him. And in the meantime, Jake, thank you very much for the time, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great one.
Thank you.